The Birmingham councillor has written to the Home Secretary, Theresa May, asking her to ban a planned demonstration by the English Defence League in Birmingham. Wasim Zafar, who represents Lascelles in East Handworth, says if the event is allowed to go ahead, it would incite racial tensions, overstretch police resources. Wasim joins me now. Hello, Wasim.
Hello, Adrian.
We've had EDL demos in Birmingham before and in the West Midlands. They're an organisation who are surely entitled in a free society to have a demonstration and express their point of view.
Adrian, I'm very proud of our stance in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but this clearly is not that. This is inciting racial hatred. We clearly saw in September 2009 the problems that EDL demonstrating and marching through Birmingham city centre caused. There was absolute carnage. There was fights breaking out between young Asian youths and white British people. It clearly isn't what Birmingham's all about. We've had, 6 years today in the neighbourhood that I've lived all my life and the ward that I represent today. We had the race riots in Lascelles. We had a young man, Azar Young Sam, who was stabbed to death, total innocent bystander on his way home after a day's work, stabbed to death.
Nothing to do with the EDL. It should be said.
Nothing to do with the EDL, but clearly what racial hatred can do to our city. And that is a clear example of what happened. He was stabbed to death because of the colour of his skin, nothing else. We don't need another Azar Young Sam murdered to death here in Birmingham. And we saw the fights break out in 2009. We saw the issues. God forbid if this demonstration or march, whatever they're planning, is allowed to go ahead on next Saturday. Imagine if there was a loss of life as a result of that. What would the government be saying there? The leadership shown by our local authority has been dismal. They need to come up now and protest and campaign against this.
Wasim, I was in Birmingham City Centre the last time the EDL were here, and I've mentioned on air before that after that the EDL pledged that they would not visit Birmingham again, and West Midlands Police said that they weren't welcome. However,
yes,
they've exercising their democratic right to come back. On that occasion, EDL supporters were penned into a pub in Birmingham city centre. I had to duck, as did many people, a hail of bricks and stones that were being thrown, not by EDL supporters, but by Asian youth.
Adrian, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not doubting that took place. I'm also discouraging anybody from going into Birmingham City Centre to campaign against the EDL. First of all, we don't need to give them that sort of credence. We don't need to buy into the bait that they're offering. So I know Unite Against Fascism, and I agree with a lot of things that Unite Against Fascism do, but I don't agree with the strategy they have to counter-demonstrate in Birmingham. I know there was a meeting at Central Mosque yesterday, and they're looking at having an event to celebrate Birmingham at the same time as this. I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to let the police, if this march is to go ahead or demonstration, whatever they're planning, we need to let the police deal with it. We don't need to create a scene where we get young Asian youths or young people campaigning against EDL, going into the city centre, and them themselves creating violence. We don't need any form of actions that took place in 2009.
But we say, don't we, that we believe in free speech. Now, free speech is only meaningful if it allows people whose views we vehemently disagree with are allowed to express them. If we don't have that, then we don't have free speech, do we?
Adrian, this is no different to extremist groups who, based on Islam, and Islam clearly doesn't mean this, but based on Islam, they were preaching hatred and they were banned by the government. We clearly know that. And I don't see this is no different. I think the government needs to take a serious look at the intentions of the EDL. They come on the radio, they come on the TV, and they put their PR people up, and they have a nice face, smiling, talking about positive stuff and the fact that what Muslims have done to their country. But realistically, when they're on the streets, they're a bunch of thugs who just want to create violence based on racial profiles, which is absolutely ridiculous, and that is not what this country is all about.
Well, we're saying we have laws in this country. If people incite racial hatred, for example, or indeed if they incite religious hatred, then they can be arrested and charged. And if any EDL member or supporter does that next Saturday in Birmingham, I would hope that you and I can trust West Midlands Police to arrest anybody who is guilty or suspected of those crimes. But if there are people who are supporters and members of the EDL who just want to peacefully exercise their right to protest against what they regard as extreme Islam, again, I come back to the point that free speech dictates surely that we have to allow them to do that. Otherwise, it ain't free speech.
Adrian, there's not been many peaceful protests, demonstrations, marches by the CDL. Wherever they've gone up and down this country, it's been about creating violence.
Well, is that because of them? Is that because of them, or is that because of groups like Unite Against Fascism, who always insist on turning out in numbers and, when they can, confront them?
But the other argument, on the other hand, is UAF will say that they go out to peacefully protest against the views of EDL. I think we're on a non-winner here, and I think the government needs to step in. We don't need people campaigning, protesting against people's racial beliefs. I know, and you well know, that Muslims in Birmingham play a huge role in our society, economically and socially. And we've not had, any issues or significant issues around with the Muslim community. I know there's been arrests made in Birmingham. I know there's been convictions made, and I congratulate West Midlands Police on their tackling terrorism work in Birmingham. But by and large, the Muslim community in Birmingham is a fantastic community doing a lot of positive work, and what the EDL will do will incite racial hatred in the city. They'll as I said earlier on, I don't believe the strategy of Unite Against Fascism is appropriate. I think we should let the police, if the march goes ahead, let the police deal with EDL, let the police deal with these thugs who want to create carnage in our city. And I will be discouraging young people. I'll be discouraging all people to stay away from from the city centre, or particularly that section of the city centre where the EDL do plan to have that protest next Saturday.
Wasim, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Wasim Zafar, who represents Lascelles and East Handsworth. Let's speak now to the leader of the EDL, Tommy Robinson. Hello, Tommy.
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very good. Tommy, just explain what you're planning to do in Victoria Square next week and why you're doing it.
We're doing it. There's a list of reasons. Where do I start? There's constant problems coming from the Birmingham area. I talk to Brummies on a regular occasions about what's happening within their communities. We've seen the Undercover Mosque programme constantly. Any time it goes to Birmingham, you've seen the madrasa schools where it's a ticking time bomb. What's being taught in these Islamic madrasa schools across the country is that homophobic, it's anti-Semitic, it's anti-democratic, it's anti-British, and a whole generation are being turned against us. As we've seen, tell them not even to walk on the same side of the street as us.
So what is homophobic, anti-Semitic and anti-British?
So, their views. You had a preacher at Birmingham University come over to Birmingham University last year. He's on record as saying that when he's talking about adultery and homosexuality, that it's a public crime, it deserves a public punishment. Adultery is punishable by death, a slow and painful death by stoning. And he's talking at Birmingham University.
But Tommy, I mean, as you acknowledge, that is a preacher. I'm not aware of this, but I'm not disputing that it happened. I just don't know. That's a preacher who came to Birmingham University who's not of the Birmingham Muslim community.
You've just had six local Muslims arrested again.
Well, Tommy, if they've been arrested, I don't think we should, in the greatest British traditions, I don't think we should be commenting on them until or unless any convictions or court cases heard. I think that would be in keeping with the finest British tradition, and not only that, it would ensure that we can carry on this conversation without being taken off the airwaves. Okay. But Tommy, you're using phrases like homophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Britishness. Now, do you believe that is true of the Muslim community in Birmingham as a whole, that they are anti-Semitic as a whole, as a group, that they are homophobic and that they are anti-British?
No, I believe that if they're following the teachings of the Quran, then yes, it's homophobic, yes, it's anti-Semitic. Do not take Jews or Christians as your friends. It promotes death for homosexuals. It promotes a lot of hatred. There's so much hatred coming out of it. Kill the disbelievers wherever you find them. Strike fear into the heart of the disbeliever. All these things. But don't get me wrong. I've grown up in Luton, in a multicultural town. Some of the best people I've met growing up are Muslim. Yeah, I know there's great Muslims. No one needs to win that argument with me. What I'm saying is there's a serious problem with certain ideologies of Islam that's happening across this country. Birmingham is being hit big with it. A lot of people are worried with what's happening in their communities, the Islamist control in their communities. You've got Hizb ut-Tahrir constantly, one of the most extremist organisations in the world. They're banned in most other European countries, constantly having rallies and marches, etc., and seminars in Birmingham.
I don't know about it. I thought Hizb ut-Tahrir were actually banned in the UK as well, Tommy.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're not banned. David Cameron keeps promising to ban them, but as we see, it's all talk every time with our politicians, and we don't see any anything like local Muslim MPs, like your man who was just on the radio. We don't see him coming out calling for them to be banned. When they have their rallies, they have their marches.
Well, Tommy, I'm not aware of a Hizb ut-Tahrir rally or march in Birmingham at any point. Let me tell you, Tommy, about a story we ran on BBC WM, which surprisingly wasn't picked up by any of the national or indeed the local media. And it's about Anjem Choudary, who, as I'm sure you'll know, represents what most people regard as an extreme Muslim ideology, OK? And Anjem Choudary does believe, ultimately, that homosexuality is a sin against God and should be treated, certainly in an Islamic state, with the harshest penalties. He's told me that. Now, when Anjem Choudary and some of his supporters gathered in Birmingham, in places like Sparkbrook and in Alum Rock, a group of local Muslim leaders got together, the local Muslim community, and very politely but very firmly they said to Anjem Choudary, we don't want you here. You do not represent the views of Muslims in Birmingham. You will stir up trouble in our community and we don't want you. That was the local Muslim community standing strong, turning away extremists within their midst. That surely is more representative of the Muslim community in Birmingham than the kind of image you're propagating, I would suggest.
But when they do that, you class them as standing strong and heroic moderates, I guess. But when we stand against Anjem Choudary, a lot of people want to class us as extremists. We do exactly what you just said in our communities. Just because we're non-Muslim, we completely go against what he said. If you remember why we formed and why we originally come to Birmingham, we come to Birmingham because Anjem Choudary held an Islamic roadshow in Birmingham city centre with hundreds of Muslims. They had a big banner that read Jesus was a Muslim, and they converted an 11-year-old child called Sean without his parents, who was shopping in the city centre with his friend. They got him up on stage and they converted him in the middle of Birmingham city centre to Islam. Now, the local Islamic community response to that was what? It was nothing. The local Islamic community, we come to Birmingham, as you've just said, we come to try and highlight this issue with placards that read Muslim, no problem, extremist Muslim, big problem.
Yeah. Oh, Tommy, you did also, amongst your followers at least, have slogans that read things like, and I know this because I saw them with my own eyes, Allah is a pedo, God is a paedophile.
No, there wasn't slogans like that.
Yeah, there were, Tommy, because I saw them with my own eyes.
People were shouting that. People were shouting.
I saw painted banners saying that, Tommy.
Well, I've never seen a painted banner saying that. Well, and when you see people, he said on the street, there is a lot of anger, there is a lot of frustration. Now, we're trying to channel that anger, harness it, and direct it in the right route, which is peacefully protesting. If you look at how our demonstrations have gone since 2009, you can't expect purity from an organisation that's 6 months old. We're 2 years old now. Our demonstrations are peaceful now. We have a right to come to Birmingham, we have the right to highlight it, and I am in no doubt at all that local Islamic youth will come out and attack us, as they do wherever we go in the country. That's what happens, is what happened in Birmingham last time. And when you see we're condemned straight away for it, and there is a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger, and at times it will boil over. People are angry. People are angry with what's happening to their country. What Islamist control is destroying our communities, and that's what you're seeing on the street.
Tommy, one final question for you. When you last came to Birmingham, the EDL, because of the violence, and I accept that you would argue that you didn't cause the violence, although I did see EDL supporters also throwing bottles into the street on New Street. There was violence on both sides that I witnessed, but you said you would not come back to Birmingham. West Midlands Police said you were no longer welcome in Birmingham. Why are you coming back?
Because nothing's changed in Birmingham. No one's listening. It's not like we've got any confidence that West Midlands Police Force or local councillors are going to try and address the problems. They're not addressing them. They're pretending they're not there. The black community and the white community in Birmingham are treated with iron fists. The Islamic community are treated with gloves. And that's just the way it is. And it's not on. You can't have a two-tier policing system. There can be no master race. And I'm sorry, but there is a master race in certain areas in this country, and it's Islam. And they've been treated... Yeah, sorry.
No, Tommy, thank you. You've made your point. You've made it clear. I hope you think you've had a fair hearing on BBC WM today. That's Tommy Robinson, the leader of the EDL. We heard earlier from Wasim Zafar, who is a councillor in Handsworth and East Lizelles, calling on Theresa May to ban the EDL demo next week.